Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm good. And I think I pressed record this time.
Perfect.
So we're going to have the audio and the visual this time.
Right? I was gonna say I ended up finding the audio, but I'm glad that we're able to get this now. Just turning my alarm
Yeah.
off. Perfect.
I always enjoyed an extra excuse to chat with you for a bit. So
I love it. Here we are. This is great.
take two.
Take two. I love it.
So I was actually, thinking this morning of a few different things I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
So let's start by explaining to everybody what your official title is. What are you? What do you do?
That's a great question. So before we do start, Jill, I do want to acknowledge you and who you are in the world and what you've created with this podcast. I remember, when we met in our group with Don, the energy that you brought and who you are, it was incredible and inspiring. I love what you bring with the athletic background and the mindset, what you've created with the Irate Warriors and what you do for those children, the families, the young adults, and their trajectory. I need to acknowledge that. And it
Thank
really
you.
inspired me also to look at how I could also help a wider variety of clients as well.
Oh,
So thank
nice.
you.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. So most people would call me a coach. I would say I'm committed to helping people and with service and helping them create their future. But most people will call me a coach, some executive coach, performance coach, mindset coach, all the same terminology. And I'll say the big distinction, as I'm sure some of your viewers know, between coaching and therapy, it's that coaching is focused on the future, creating the future from a future, bringing it into now. Therapy is more focused on the past.
That's such an interesting way to put it. That's so good. And so who would hire a coach, let's say?
Great question. It could be people who are, there's high performers who are looking to kick it into the next gear, that there's something in the way, whether it's real or made up, that's preventing them from being who they say they are and what they want to do. There's also some people who are looking for that direction and not sure where to start, and that'd be a great place to look for a coach. I will say, if anyone is looking for a coach, make sure that coach has a coach.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah,
In fact, you're now working, the coach that introduced you and I, that we were both working with,
yes,
you're working with his coach,
yes,
right? And so explain to us a little bit about that experience and what's going on there.
yes. So, yeah, Don Scott had introduced me to Devin. It took me to the Game Changer experience, which was a 2.5 day transformational experience. Miracles were created in that room for me with who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. I created my engagement in that room. Just really stepped into that next chapter. Big creations. I created my apprenticeship with Devin in that room, and so yeah, now I'm working with Devin on a one-on-one basis. He is known as the go-to mindset coach of the NBA, MLB, Fortune 100 companies, and it has been the best experience.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And so you're getting to learn from him, through him also, personally and professionally, I bet.
Oh
That's,
yeah.
that's
Yep,
awesome.
yep. Lots of inner work on the self with him and just learning the game.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, and so, and I threw us into this before I even really let you tell everybody who you are and how you got here. So what, tell us how you got here, but in that, I'd love to hear some life experiences that have contributed to your being a coach, like
Yeah,
qualifies you.
absolutely. Absolutely. So born and raised in the Midwest, I'm a Cleveland kid. Grew up loving the outdoors, and baseball was part of my life. I mean, I remember T-ball all the way up through like kid pitch to high school summer ball. I eat, slept, and breathed baseball. I
I just
studied
had this vision of little tiny you, young you. I bet you were the cutest little boy with
the
your little baseball bat. Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
Yeah, it was my life. And so baseball was a big part of that. Same with photography later on in high school. Um, and, I only child, had a wonderful upbringing. And I'd say somewhere along the way, I started to believe the negative thoughts and stories. And as I went off to college, I thought it was time to grow up. So I left behind photography, I left behind baseball, And part of my story ended up being substances and creating a turnaround there as well. Um, I was introduced to coaching about a decade ago in my work, and when I was in a leadership role, had no idea what coaching was. But that really planted a seed. And I found a notebook from that leadership academy that I went through, and it defined what coaching was. And under it, I said, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to help people and fan their flame and like light their fire. And it was like, here I am now, 10 years later, doing that. And I'm just so grateful to be in this position.
Isn't that so interesting how, and I bet you've seen this in your coaching, how the answer is sometimes right under our nose. And part of the Arate Warrior, the reason for its being is that, Isaac needed to hear the message from somebody other than mom or dad.
Mm,
And I'm guessing the coaching is much the same way. And just, and you'd probably say that you oftentimes don't give them the answer, you just lead them by questioning for them to find their answer themselves. But it's an outside voice sometimes that the objectiveness of it or whatever that creates the answers inside. I just think that's so fascinating. Here you had the proof of it underneath you all the time.
yep, right there all along.
So who is your ideal client? Or do you call them clients? What are they? I was gonna say
Yeah.
patient. That's not right.
Yeah, I work I call them clients. I partner with them, and I would say my ideal client, it my ideal client is someone who does want to kick it into the next gear. Whether or not they have a vision of it, they have that openness, they have that willingness, and they want to know what that next gear looks like. Um, I would say it ranges from age and what industry they're in. I love working with, young high school athletes such as Isaac, all the way up to entrepreneurs who have their businesses and other coaches as well. But really someone who has that drive and that commitment to say, okay, like I want to be better, I want to do better. Help me step into this next chapter. I'm all in on that.
Love that. And I was saying this yesterday when we've talked, but I was the same way with personal training. I don't want to drag somebody kicking and screaming and sometimes people feel like, well, then what's the point of you? That's what I need is someone to drag me.
Hmm.
But I think if you can find a way to, as a coach too, and that's kind of our job, is to find a way for them to find it within themselves. And some of that has to just do with passion and purpose, right? Like being excited about, getting up and what you have in front of you every day, or at least parts of it, you know.
Hmm.
That's so great. Okay, so and you've worked with Isaac a little bit, and you were kind enough to send him a book, Pound the Stone by Joshua
Yes.
Metcalf. And I've read, I don't think I've read Pound the Stone. I've read his Chop Wood, Carry Water,
Yes.
another good one. Tell me a little, and us a little, about why a 16-year-old boy would benefit from that book. And thank you, by the way, for sending it.
Oh,
It was so sweet of you.
he's more than welcome. It was it felt like the best book for where he's at. And the reason for that is so Pound the Stone, the main character is a high school basketball player, which pairs perfectly with where
Yeah.
Isaac was. And it's the story of how he meets a mentor and his mentor's wife, and how they teach him lessons to not only become a better basketball player, but those lessons all come from off the court. So it's about who are you, not only on the court, but off the court. And there's really no difference and how
Mhm.
they all intertwine. And the main idea was stick with the practice, pound the stone. That greatness isn't pretty. It's what's done when no one's looking. And it's just that consistency. And it comes from the Stonecutter's Credo, which was, it's the thousandth cut on the stone that actually breaks it. It's not the first one. So stick with it and, stay in the practice.
Right. And I'm listening to that thinking, again, another note with the Arate Warrior thing is that we talk a lot about is all the decisions you make in a day. And if
Mm,
we can turn some of those decisions into habits that we just do naturally, it's just who we are. It makes, you know, the decision fatigue and the willpower fatigue at the end of the day so much easier if those things are just ingrained in you. And so, you personally, what have been some habits that throughout your training in these last 10 years or so you have developed that have made your life easier?
yeah, that's a great question. So two habits come to mind. The first is reflection. which started about a decade ago in my job. And it was after major decisions or meetings, taking that time to look back on what occurred, how I showed up. And it was less about the outcome, but really looking at who I was being and my performance in there. That also ties back to a sports habit too. I remember after pitching, reviewing the game film and really looking at how did I perform. Um, and the second habit, which has been more recent, is really leaning into taking the pause and creating that pause. For me personally, in that pause, I have the choice to react or create. And I've spent a lot of my life reacting, and I've seen the life that creates. And so for me, it's to take that pause to choose, what do I want to create from this? And a big practice that has really been a game changer for me, that my coach Devin introduced to me, was taking a sheet of paper and drawing a line right down the middle. On the left side, putting what happened, aka reality as it is, and then on the right side, putting down the story, which is also known as fantasy. And literally on the left side, just putting down what actually occurred. And on the right side, I'm making what it all meant. And I realize I can be a really good storyteller, and that the story isn't true. And when I stick to the facts, I get to choose the Jonathan who's going to create from there, which is way more powerful than the story that I've made up about something that happened that didn't really even happen.
Not the truth. Like our own storytelling is what gets us into a lot more trouble than I think to Byron Katie's work, similar to
Mm,
that, in that she asks you to look at the scenario, write it down, and then ask yourself, is it true?
yeah.
Is it really true? And I'd worked that once over with my daughter, who was at the time, I think, like 9.
Yeah.
And she was convinced that one of her coaches in gymnastics was like trying to hurt her, and so she wrote that down. Maybe she was 10 or 9, or no, it's like she's 12 now, so it had to be like 9. But she wrote down, my coach is trying to hurt me. And then and then I walked her through the thing, and it was like, are you sure that's true? And of course, her little 9-year-old self-righteous self was like, yes. And then you're supposed to reframe the statement in all the different ways that could be true. So for
Hmm.
example, my coach is trying to hurt me. I'm trying to hurt my coach. My coach is not trying to hurt me. Just reword and you're supposed to think about each of those sentences as, how could this be as or more true than my sentence? Anyways, I thought we were wasting our time. She was just, not really doing much with it, and she left. I finally said, go play, whatever. But a couple days later, she was sitting in the bathtub after her practice, and she said, you know what, Mom?
Hmm.
I looked at my coach today and I thought, she's not trying to hurt me.
Mm.
And it was just so out of the blue. And so it's so funny, like these exercises, and you can find so much stuff on Instagram and in the internet and in books and in podcasts about the things we should be doing to really rethink our thoughts and see if they're really serving us and all that. But I can see how a coach slowing you down to actually doing those.
Yeah,
They're all out there, and we all have the to-do list that could happen out there, but whether we sit down and actually do them is another thing. And they don't work if you don't work them, you know?
exactly. Yep.
So true.
Practice.
Can you tell us any favorite moments of coaching, like epiphany moments a client had, or just something that you learned that was fun?
Yeah, I would say a standout moment in my coaching career was this past spring, where I was able to speak to a senior class, and they called it their senior symposium. And throughout the day, they divided the senior class up into 4 groups, about 40 students each, and they rotated them through different speakers from the police, the firefighters, crisis centers. And then they brought me in. And of course, at like 2:30, the kids are they're completely gassed. They don't want to hear anything else. And what I was able to do with them was to have them just be present and to look at their thoughts, and presented a few different ideas to them on how powerful their thoughts are and how unique their own abilities were. So some of the things that we looked at was the power of no, and how their no is just as powerful as their yes. And we tied that to Warren Buffett, who says no to things 90% of the time, and that's why he's so successful. And it was just another way for them to look at it. And we broke it down even more to say, well, what do you make saying no mean about you? Well, kids may not like me. I won't be cool. Like all the stories that came with it. And at the end of it, each time I had a young female student come up and say, the most important thing that I learned was the power of my no, that no means no. No is a complete sentence, and I don't owe an explanation for my no to anyone. And it's just like that was some of the most amazing transformation to think at 18, 17, 18 years old, they hear this, and now that changes the trajectory of their life as a, in business, in a relationship with their families, down their future generations. That was a really big game changer for me in that moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, you think about that, especially at such a young age.
Yeah.
Kids are so impressionable, and it's not like they probably hadn't heard that statement before somewhere, that no
Right.
works or is okay enough. It's a complete sentence, like you said. But having somebody that they look up to and trust, give them almost permission, to embrace this concept. Just think I bet you that was pretty, I bet you that many parents were really glad for you to have implemented that.
Yeah. It was an awesome time. I'm
Awesome.
looking forward to next year with that.
That's awesome. So, your back to your habit, or sorry, your two habits that you formed. Your pause and then your reflection.
Hmm.
I personally, I've been trying to get my son to watch more film. For
Mm.
example, I do a lot of film, and even my daughter with their diving. Like those are things that they. But I remember when you and I were working with Don, that was another part of his system that he suggested, is to kind of recap your day at the end of
Hmm.
the day. And I might think about it, but I haven't been good about journaling that or just writing it down. And do you have any journal advice, or do you think journaling is important? And if so, which parts? Um, Tell us a little bit about any practices you have there, or example, or advice you have there.
Yeah. Yeah. So journaling has been a huge reflective and meditative practice for me. I have one in the morning and one at night. And part of the morning one is to write down three things that I'm grateful for, to really tap into the gratitude, and then also three things that would make today extraordinary. And what I found through that is that the brain is like a GPS system. So when I put down, today, what would make today extraordinary is to show up, play all out with Jill, and have the most extraordinary conversation. My body's going to start following that. My mind's going to be primed for that. And then at the end of the day, what I do is I actually write down what are three things that made today extraordinary. So I'm ending it also with another version of gratitude. Gratitude's really, really been really powerful in my life, and something that keeps me present, keeps me grounded, and I think it's one of the most powerful feelings that I can personally create from.
That's awesome. And so then, I love it. How do you have your epiphanies when you're trying to dig through self-improvement or a problem, or like, as you've come across, I'm sure over the years, whether you're listening to a book or a podcast, you just catch them that way? Or did you ever journal? Like I had an experience once. I don't know if it was Dawn that had suggested it or whatever, but doing the whole like self, what do they call it? Like you're writing out your own therapy. You're
Oh
just like
yeah, yeah.
talking to yourself. There's you and then the yourself that's talking back and forth, and you're just supposed to write without thinking. You're going to throw the piece of paper away later. Like nobody's going to see it. Don't worry about your writing. And you're just
Hmm.
talking back and forth. And I can't even remember right now the epiphany I had, but there was a moment when I was questioning, like, why is this happening or whatever, and out came the answer.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what? Oh my gosh. How do you do any sort of self-reflection or digging that way, or?
Yeah, I would say I love the idea of free writing, and that's been really helpful for me. Any kind of writing that creates space. So sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's just to let it go. What I found is that I create so much better and thrive in space rather than having like always taking in information. So it may be something like I listen to an audiobook and I just write down a few thoughts that day, or it could be just pulling out a blank page in my journal and just dumping out everything that's on my mind to see like what's really under the thought or the story that's there. And it comes back to like not real, and you mentioned it with Byron Katie. It's like the best habit that I can create are practices that separate me from my thoughts, because I it's a dangerous place for me to be in when I believe all my thoughts, because
Oh
most of
yeah.
the times they aren't true.
Yeah. That's a very, and if you think about, just back to teenagers, because I have one and an
Yeah.
almost one. You think about the rampant thoughts that go through their minds, and without a level voice around to, or a practice around to remind them that this may or may not be the thought I need to follow.
Yeah.
That's a very valuable tool. I mean, you think about all the, like if you'd had that tool before you got into the substances, et cetera, everything would be different. And of course, we're grateful for the path you took because it led you here.
Yeah.
But I just think about, with RTA Warriors, the original intent was for kids to, prevent the need for so much therapy when we grow up.
Yep.
Let's be honest, we're all gonna need therapy. I always say that, so don't worry. Okay, well, how can people find out more about you or learn how to get a hold of you? And do you have like a newsletter or Instagram, or tell us how we can find you?
Yes, so I have a website. It's a landing page. It is www.clevelandblockcoaching.com. That's CLEVELANDBLOCK coaching.com. And then I'd like to give my email as well, which is the letter J, then a period, WAKEEN at clevelandblockcoaching.com. And any of the viewers and listeners, I do have some resources for them, some articles, videos, some things that I've written. And if they reach out, I'd love to support them on their journey and give these resources to them.
It's awesome. Thank you. And I don't know, I'll try and put those notes up too so that people have access to them. Thank you so much for being here twice. You're so good to come back for more. And
Absolutely.
as always, I love chatting with you. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Jill. This has been wonderful.
Talk to you soon.
All right, talk soon.